This is part 2 of our series. If you haven't yet, listen to part 1 for a clearer understanding and richer context. As we dive deeper into the journey of habit transformation, we begin to uncover the often invisible forces that shape our behavior. Forces that work silently in the background, either pushing us forward or pulling us back. In the first part, we explored the foundations of habit formation, focusing on how small changes, when made consistently, can lead to massive outcomes. Now, in this second half, we move from the why of habits into the how of sustaining them, especially when motivation fades and life becomes unpredictable. Let's begin with one of the most overlooked elements in habit building, environment design. Imagine you're trying to cut back on sugar. You can use willpower, self-talk, or set reminders, but if your kitchen counter still displays cookies in a glass jar, your progress is at the mercy of your environment. James Clear, in Atomic Habits, argues that environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. In other words, it's easier to act on a habit when the cues around you are aligned with that habit. Take the example of a man named Daniel, who struggled with consistency in his workout routine. For years, he believed he was just lazy. But after a friend suggested a change, Daniel rearranged his environment. He moved his workout clothes to the foot of his bed, placed a yoga mat near his door, and swapped Netflix's front screen on his smart TV with a YouTube playlist of home workouts. Within a week, he had worked out more times than he had in the previous month. The change wasn't internal. It was environmental. The cues became harder to ignore and easier to act on. This leads us to a core truth. What we see shapes what we do. If your workspace is clean and organized, your mind tends to follow suit. If your phone is flooded with distractions, your focus tends to fragment. One of the most powerful things you can do for your habits is not to fight against your current environment, but to redesign it, subtly, deliberately, so it supports the identity you're building. And speaking of identity, let's revisit that idea for a moment. In the earlier parts of the series, we discussed the identity-based habit model, where habits are not just about outcomes, like losing weight, or even processes, like going to the gym, but about reinforcing who you believe you are. I am the kind of person who exercises daily. This model is powerful because identity drives behavior, and behavior reinforces identity. A feedback loop that strengthens with every small win. But here's the catch. Identities aren't always consciously chosen. Many of us are walking around with default identities, shaped by our upbringing, our peer groups, or past failures. If you've tried and failed to stay consistent in the past, you may have unconsciously adopted an identity like, I'm someone who can never stick to anything. That self-concept becomes a silent saboteur, undermining your efforts before they begin. So part of habit change is not just creating new routines, it's about rewriting the story you tell yourself. To rewrite that story, affirmation through action becomes crucial. Let's say you want to become a writer. Telling yourself, I am a writer, might feel fake at first, especially if you haven't written in weeks. But writing 100 words each morning? That's a vote for the identity. It doesn't have to be a novel. It just has to be consistent. As Clear says, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. Which brings us to another critical piece, tracking and accountability. Imagine a habit as a tiny seed. Tracking your progress is like watering that seed every day. You may not see growth immediately, but you know the seed is alive. Whether you use a notebook, an app, or even a simple calendar, tracking helps you see your progress clearly. It reduces ambiguity and keeps motivation alive. But beyond self-tracking, having someone to check in with, a friend, a coach, a community, adds a layer of accountability that can make all the difference. We are social creatures, and we tend to rise to the level of those we surround ourselves with. A powerful motivator is simply this: don't break the chain. If you've been consistent for 7 days, you won't want to be the person who breaks that 8th day. Momentum creates its own gravity. However, even with the perfect environment, strong identity, and solid tracking, there's one obstacle that inevitably appears: boredom. In fact, one of the main reasons habits fail is not because they're hard, but because they become boring. Doing the same workout, writing the same kind of journal entry, meditating for 5 minutes. Again, the repetition can dull the spark that got you started. Here's where pros and amateurs diverge. Amateurs wait to feel motivated again. Pros show up even when it's dull. The secret? Make the system interesting even when the task isn't. This can mean changing the scenery, gamifying your progress, or finding deeper meaning in the routine. Think of a baker who kneads dough daily. The act is repetitive, but the meaning, the intent behind it, gives it richness. Boredom is not a signal to quit. It's a signal to recommit. Finally, let's talk about resilience, the ability to bounce back when things go off track. Because they will. Life gets in the way. You'll miss a day or 3. You'll feel like you've failed. But the goal is not perfection, it's recovery. Missing once is a mistake. Missing twice becomes a pattern. So the key is to never miss twice. If you fall off the wagon, don't judge. Reset. Return to the next small step. As we close this part, let's reflect on where we've come. You've learned that your environment matters, your identity shapes your habits, and your ability to stay consistent even in boredom is what leads to mastery. The next chapter will go deeper into how to break bad habits. Not just stop them, but dismantle them at the root. Because building good habits is one side of the coin. The other side, and often the harder one, is breaking the old ones that hold you back. So far, we've talked about building good habits, from designing supportive environments to embracing new identities and showing up even when boredom creeps in. But what about the flip side? What do we do with the bad habits? The ones that sneak into our routines, quietly sabotaging progress, robbing us of time, energy, or health. Breaking bad habits is rarely about sheer willpower. In fact, willpower often fails when you need it most. That's because bad habits are deeply automatic behaviors, triggered by familiar cues, rewarded instantly, and repeated so often they've carved grooves into our neural pathways. To truly break them, we need to do more than resist. We need to restructure the system that allows them to thrive. Let's begin with one key principle: make it invisible. Just as good habits flourish when cues are obvious and accessible, bad habits persist when their triggers are constantly in view. Say you're trying to cut down on screen time. If your phone is always within reach, buzzing with notifications, resisting it becomes a minute-by-minute battle. But what if you remove the cue altogether? Keep the phone in another room, disable push notifications, log out of addictive apps. The idea isn't to rely on self-control, it's to remove the friction by removing the trigger. Next, we tackle the craving. Every habit, good or bad, exists because it satisfies a need. Stress relief, boredom reduction, escape. The cigarette isn't just about nicotine, it's about the break. The snack isn't just about hunger, it's about comfort. If you try to eliminate a bad habit without replacing the need it satisfies, you'll leave a void. And voids don't last long. The habit creeps back in like water finding the cracks. So the strategy becomes this: replace the routine, not the reward. If you usually unwind with a drink after a long day, can you replace it with a walk, music, or talking to a friend? You're still decompressing, but now in a healthier way. This substitution method is powerful because it recognizes that bad habits aren't just bad. They're fulfilling something. The goal isn't to punish yourself for wanting relief. It's to redirect that desire toward something better. James Clear describes a useful framework. Make bad habits unattractive and make good ones satisfying. You can use a technique called temptation bundling to do this. Pair a positive habit with something you enjoy. For example, only listen to your favorite podcast while jogging, or watch Netflix only while folding laundry. The pleasure reinforces the behavior, making it more sustainable. On the flip side, to break bad habits, add friction and consequence. Make the habit hard to do. Delete apps. Block websites. If you spend too much on impulse shopping, remove saved card details and unsubscribe from promo emails. Friction may seem minor, but even a few extra seconds can disrupt the automatic loop, giving your brain time to choose differently. There's also accountability, and in this case, it becomes a deterrent. Announce your intentions to someone, or better yet, make a habit contract. A habit contract is a written agreement with yourself and a witness stating that if you engage in a bad habit, there's a consequence, maybe a monetary fine or a commitment to do an unpleasant task. It adds stakes, and stakes shape behavior. Let's bring this to life with a story. Meet Sarah, a freelance designer who struggled with procrastination. She'd scroll through social media for hours, convincing herself she was researching inspiration. In truth, she was stuck in a habit loop: cue, boredom, craving, stimulation, response, scrolling, reward, dopamine hit. When she decided to break the cycle, she started small. First, she moved her phone across the room during work hours. Then, she installed a browser blocker for certain sites. But the biggest change? She made a public post committing to send daily progress updates to a friend. The result? Within weeks, her productivity soared. The habit didn't just weaken, it lost its hold on her. This example highlights a deeper idea. Awareness precedes change. You can't fix a habit you don't fully understand. That's why the first step in breaking bad habits is often observation. Track your behaviors for a few days. Note what triggers them. What emotional state are you in? What environment are you in? Are you tired, stressed, hungry, bored? Patterns will emerge, and those patterns give you the power to intervene. Another useful tactic is the inversion of the 4 laws of behavior change. 1. Make it invisible. Remove cues. 2. Make it unattractive. Highlight the cost. Reframe the craving. 3. Make it difficult. Add steps or friction. 4. Make it unsatisfying. Attach negative consequences. Each of these inversions helps break the automatic nature of bad habits. Over time, as the behavior becomes harder to start, less rewarding, and more conscious, the neural pathway weakens, like a trail that fades when no one walks it anymore. But here's the most important part. Be kind to yourself in the process. Habit change is not about perfection. It's about awareness, intention, and gentle course correction. You will mess up, you'll slip. The key is to not turn a stumble into a slide. 1 mistake is human. 2 in a row is a trend. Get back up, recenter, and resume. Remember, breaking a bad habit isn't a single event. It's a continuous act of rewiring. With every repetition you resist, you cast a vote for your future self. And slowly, that version becomes real. In the next chapter, we'll explore the psychology behind habit stacking, how to link new behaviors to existing ones, creating a powerful chain of action that practically runs on autopilot. You'll see how one well-placed habit can become the anchor for an entire routine, transforming your day, one tiny link at a time. We've explored the science of habit formation and the strategies for breaking bad ones. Now, it's time to dive into one of the most elegant tools in behavior change, habit stacking. The idea of anchoring a new habit to an existing one, so that one naturally triggers the other, like links in a chain. The principle is simple but powerful. You already have dozens of established habits. You brush your teeth, drink coffee, check your phone, tie your shoes. These are actions that happen consistently and automatically. By attaching a new behavior to an existing one, you remove the need to remember or motivate yourself. The cue is already built into your routine. You just stack the habit on top of it. James Clear explains this through a formula. After current habit, I will new habit. For example, after I brew my morning coffee, I will journal for 1 minute. After I brush my teeth, I will do 5 push-ups. After I take off my shoes, I will meditate for 1 minute. Each of these pairs leverages an anchor point, a habit that's already reliable, and builds on it. Over time, the pair fuses together in your brain. You don't just brew coffee. You brew coffee and journal. It becomes one seamless loop. Let's meet David. He wanted to start reading daily but always forgot or didn't have time. So he decided to habit stack. Every day after dinner, an activity that never changed, he would read just 1 page. 1 page, not a chapter, not a goal that could overwhelm, just a single page. Within a month, that 1 page turned into 5, then 10, and then reading became as natural as his evening meal. He didn't change his whole schedule. He just linked one habit to another. That's the secret of habit stacking. It doesn't demand radical change. It thrives on consistency and association. The more predictable the anchor habit, the more effective the stack. To build your own habit stacks, start by making a list of habits you already do reliably. Brushing your teeth, locking the door, washing your face, turning off your alarm. These are your anchors. Then identify small behaviors you want to introduce: drinking water, stretching, reviewing goals, affirmations. Pair them using the formula and keep the new habit tiny. The goal is not intensity, it's frequency. Another key element: use your environment as a visual reminder. Place your journal beside the coffee machine. Put your vitamins next to your toothbrush. These visual cues reinforce the habit stack, making it more likely to happen, not because of motivation, but because of design. Now let's build on this with the idea of implementation intentions, a psychological strategy where you plan exactly when and where a habit will occur. Instead of vague goals like, "I'll exercise more," you say, "I'll exercise at 7 a.m. in the living room." The more specific the intention, the more likely it gets done. And when combined with habit stacking, this becomes a behavioral powerhouse. Here's what it looks like in practice. After I take off my shoes at home, I will change into workout clothes and do 10 minutes of yoga in the living room. Notice the detail. It tells your brain, this is what happens, at this place, at this time. Vague intentions get vague results. Specific intentions get action. There's also a neurological advantage here. When habits are stacked and tied to consistent cues, they activate a part of the brain called the basal ganglia, which is responsible for automatic behaviors. The more reliable the stack, the stronger the brain's encoding, and the less cognitive effort it takes. Let's take a step further and explore habit chaining, a sequence of multiple habits built on top of one another. For example, 1. After I wake up, I will make my bed. 2. After I make my bed, I will drink a glass of water. 3. After I drink water, I will do 1 minute of breathing exercises. This creates a morning ritual, a sequence that becomes automatic. Each habit cues the next. And because each one is small, the chain doesn't feel intimidating. It flows. This is how powerful routines are built, not in massive overhauls, but in layered, reliable patterns. If you can master the art of habit stacking and chaining, you can redesign your days without a massive willpower drain. Let's look at one final example. Aisha, a medical student with long, exhausting days. She struggled to stay consistent with studying outside of classes, so she built a post-class habit stack. After I close my laptop at 5 p.m., I will write down 3 key insights from today. After I write them down, I will review flashcards for 10 minutes. After flashcards, I'll prepare my notes for tomorrow. This sequence, all under 30 minutes, became her evening anchor, sharpening her recall and creating a sense of control in a chaotic schedule. And the best part? She never had to rely on motivation. The stack carried her forward. That's the beauty of this system. Small actions, repeated consistently, create momentum, and momentum makes everything else easier. In our next part, we'll explore how tracking and reflection help reinforce habits, why seeing progress, no matter how small, fuels motivation and keeps you on course. You'll learn how to design systems that show you your wins, reward your efforts, and create positive reinforcement loops that make sticking to good habits feel deeply satisfying. In the last episode, we discovered how habit stacking and chaining can turn small actions into a powerful, automatic routine. Now, we dive into a concept that ties everything together: tracking and reflection. This is how you ensure that your habits don't just start, they stick. Let's start with a simple truth. What gets measured gets managed. When you track a habit, you bring visibility to your progress. That visibility fuels momentum. It's no longer a vague hope that you're improving. It becomes tangible, measurable, real. James Clear emphasizes a tool called the habit tracker, a visual record of your consistency. Whether it's a calendar where you mark X's, an app that logs steps, or a journal entry, the principle remains the same. Every action counts, and each count is a win. Let's consider Daniel. He wanted to build a meditation habit, but struggled to stay consistent. So he printed a 30-day tracker and taped it above his desk. Each evening, if he meditated for even 1 minute, he marked a big red X. At first it seemed small, almost silly, but by day 7, the growing chain became a visual motivator. He didn't want to break the streak. It wasn't just about meditation anymore. It was about keeping the chain going. That simple tracker created a game his brain wanted to win. This idea is powerful because it taps into something deeper: identity reinforcement. Every time you mark progress, you affirm the belief, I'm the kind of person who does this. And the more consistent you are, the stronger that identity becomes. Now, tracking isn't just about streaks. It's also about reflection, understanding why something worked or didn't. Take 3 minutes a week to ask, what habits worked this week? Which ones didn't? What got in the way? What small change could improve next week? This simple weekly check-in transforms passive habits into an active learning system. It helps you adjust, refine, and grow with clarity. But what about when you break a streak? What happens when you miss a day? James Clear shares a golden rule: never miss twice. Missing once is a mistake. It happens. Life interrupts. But missing twice is a new pattern. So when you fall off, the goal isn't to feel guilt, it's to rebound. The faster you recover, the stronger the habit becomes. This mindset shift from perfection to recovery is what separates short-term effort from long-term success. You're not aiming to be flawless. You're aiming to stay in motion. Let's revisit Aisha, the medical student from the previous part. 1 week, she missed 3 straight days of her evening study ritual due to exams and exhaustion. Instead of quitting altogether, she looked at her habit tracker, acknowledged the break, and restarted with just 5 minutes of review the next night. That small rebound restored her momentum. It reminded her habits are flexible and resilience is part of the system. You can build your own tracking method that suits your personality. Some prefer checklists. Others use bullet journals, digital apps, or a sticky note on the fridge. It doesn't matter how. What matters is that the system gives you feedback. That feedback becomes motivation. There's also something beautiful about watching progress stack up. Whether it's pages read, miles walked, or workouts completed, each entry builds pride, and pride builds persistence. Now let's connect this to reinforcement, another pillar of habit science. When you celebrate small wins, you teach your brain, this behavior feels good. That creates a loop of positive emotion that makes repetition more likely. You don't need a trophy, just a smile, a fist pump, a quiet yes to yourself, or writing done in your journal. These tiny rewards attach pleasure to the habit, and pleasure is fuel for repetition. Think of your brain like a garden. Tracking is how you see what's growing. Reflection is how you prune and water. And reinforcement is the sunlight, the encouragement that helps good habits flourish. Let's imagine Mia, a new entrepreneur, building the habit of writing every morning. She keeps a habit tracker in her notebook and colors in a square for each day she writes. On Fridays, she looks back at the week and writes a sentence about what went well. Then she gives herself a small reward, a walk in the park or a favorite snack. It's simple, but over time, that process turns writing into a joy, not a chore. All of this leads to a key insight. Your habits become sustainable when they are emotionally rewarding and visually reinforced. The clearer your progress, the easier it is to stay motivated, not because of willpower, but because of design. In the next episode, we'll explore how environment design shapes your behavior, how to make good habits easier and bad habits harder by simply adjusting the spaces around you. You'll see how to transform your home, phone, desk, and daily flow into a system that pulls you toward better actions automatically. Last time, we explored how habit tracking and reflection bring visibility, motivation, and momentum to your journey. Now, we dive into a game-changing strategy, environment design, the subtle art of shaping your surroundings so your habits happen more naturally. You see, most people try to change their behavior by relying on willpower. But habits don't thrive on discipline alone. They thrive on design. As James Clear puts it, environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. Change your space, and you change your choices. Let's start with a simple example. Imagine two people trying to drink more water. One keeps a bottle tucked away in a kitchen cabinet. The other places a filled water bottle on their desk every morning. Who's more likely to stay hydrated? The answer is obvious. Why? Because convenience beats intention. When a good habit is easy to start, it becomes automatic. That's the power of environment. Let's look at Ethan. He wanted to stop checking his phone first thing in the morning. So he moved his charger to the living room, bought a $10 alarm clock, and left his phone outside his bedroom. That one shift, changing the physical environment, helped him reclaim his mornings. No internal battle, no dramatic resolution, just smart design. This applies everywhere. Want to eat healthier? Keep fruit on the counter and hide the junk food. Want to read more? Place a book on your pillow so it's the last thing you see at night. Want to practice guitar? Leave it on a stand in the living room instead of in a case under your bed. Make the cue visible, because when the cue is obvious, the action becomes easier. This also works in reverse. If you want to break a bad habit, make it harder to start. Want to cut down on TV? unplug it after each use or log out of your streaming accounts? Want to stop snacking, store treats on the top shelf, or out of sight? Out of sight, out of mind. It's cliché, but it's effective. Let's revisit Aisha, our medical student. She noticed her study habit was getting derailed by constant phone notifications. Instead of just trying to focus harder, she created a focused environment. Before each study session, she turned on Do Not Disturb, placed her phone in a drawer, and used a clean, distraction-free desk. That small change boosted her focus, not because she became more disciplined, but because she removed friction. Friction is key. Add friction to bad habits. Remove friction from good ones. This is how you design behavior that sticks. Think of your habits as plants and your environment as the soil. Even the strongest seed won't grow in rocky ground, but in the right conditions, growth becomes inevitable. There's also a deeper layer. Social environment. The people around you influence your habits just as much as the space around you. James Clear says, one of the most effective things you can do to build better habits is to join a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior. That's powerful, because humans are wired to fit in. If everyone around you is going to the gym, eating clean, or reading daily, you're more likely to follow suit. Let's talk about Mia. She wanted to write more, but her friends weren't writers, so she joined a local writers group. Every Saturday they met for an hour of quiet writing. Being in that room, surrounded by people who valued creativity, reinforced her identity as a writer. She didn't just want to write. She felt like writing was what people like her did. Your social environment can either reinforce your old habits or help you evolve. So choose wisely. And if you don't have that kind of environment yet, build it digitally. Join online communities, follow creators who reflect your goals, watch content that supports your habits. Immerse yourself in the world you want to grow into. One final point. Redesign doesn't have to be overwhelming. You don't need to renovate your house or quit your job. Start small. One item, one placement, one room. Create a space where your future self feels welcome and good choices feel effortless. In the next episode, we'll unpack the psychology of temptation bundling and habit contracts. Clever tricks that use your brain's love for rewards and social pressure to lock in consistency. You'll learn how to pair what you want with what you need, and how to make yourself stick to the promises you make. By now, you've seen how environment design can shape your habits almost invisibly. But what if you could take it one step further and make your brain crave the good habits you're trying to build? That's where temptation bundling comes in. The concept is simple. Pair something you need to do with something you want to do. This way, your brain starts looking forward to the productive activity because it's linked to a source of immediate satisfaction. James Clear borrows this idea from behavioral economics, where researcher Katie Milkman first introduced it with a clever example. She wanted to work out more consistently, so she only allowed herself to listen to her favorite audiobooks while at the gym. No gym, no story. That made exercise feel less like a chore and more like a reward. Let's bring this to life. Ethan, our friend from earlier, struggled to keep up with his laundry. He found it boring, tedious, something always pushed to tomorrow. Then he tried bundling. He started watching his favorite sports highlights only while folding clothes. Suddenly, laundry day became game day. Chore and pleasure bound together. This technique works beautifully because it makes your habits feel less like sacrifices and more like treats. You're not forcing yourself to write, clean, or exercise. You're rewarding yourself through those very actions. It's not just about motivation. It's about wiring. Over time, your brain starts associating the need with the want, building a positive feedback loop. Here are a few real-life bundles you can try. Only watch Netflix while on the treadmill. Listen to a favorite podcast during your commute to work. Eat at your favorite cafe, but only when reviewing your budget. Enjoy your morning latte only after completing 20 minutes of deep work. These little rules transform effort into enjoyment, and that's the secret to sustainability. Now, let's layer on another strategy: habit contracts. A habit contract is exactly what it sounds like: a written agreement with yourself, and ideally others, that outlines your commitment and the consequences if you don't follow through. It adds social accountability to personal behavior. Here's how it works. Step 1. Define your habit clearly. Step 2. Decide how often you'll do it and for how long. Step 3. Choose a consequence for failure. Step 4. Share it with someone who'll hold you accountable, or even better, sign it with a witness. It sounds intense, but it works. Why? Because when stakes are real, consistency rises. We're social creatures. We don't want to lose face or break promises, especially not publicly. Take Aisha again. She wanted to meditate daily, so she wrote a habit contract with her roommate. If she missed 2 days in a row, she had to do their chores for the entire weekend. Suddenly, the 5 minutes of calm felt like the easier option. Habit contracts work even better when they include a reward for completion and a penalty for failure. That dual structure, carrot and stick, keeps both motivation and discipline alive. Want to level it up? Use tools like Stick K or BeMinder. These apps let you pledge money toward your goal. Meet your habit, you keep the cash. Break it. It's donated, sometimes to a cause you don't support. Harsh? Maybe. But effective? Absolutely. You don't have to start big, just start clear. For example, I will go to the gym 3 times a week for the next month. If I miss a session, I will donate $10 to my least favorite political party. My friend James will monitor my progress. Now, it's not just a wish, it's a contract. Here's the takeaway. Temptation bundling makes your habits enjoyable. Habit contracts make them non-negotiable. Together, they cover both the emotional and rational sides of behavior change. One says, I want to do this. The other says, I have to do this. Use both. Reward yourself through action and hold yourself to your word. Because when motivation fades, structure remains. In the next episode, we'll explore the idea of identity-based habits, perhaps the most powerful shift of all. Instead of focusing on what you want to achieve, we'll focus on who you want to become. That mindset unlocks a level of consistency that will last a lifetime. What if the real secret to lasting habit change wasn't about goals, but about identity? This is where James Clear's core idea truly shines. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. Rather than obsessing over outcomes, the real focus should be on becoming someone who embodies the habit. Let's break that down. Instead of saying, "I want to run a marathon," say, "I'm a runner." Not, "I want to write a book," but "I'm a writer." Not, "I want to quit smoking," but "I'm not a smoker." Why does this matter? Because identity shapes behavior more powerfully than motivation. If you believe you're the kind of person who exercises, then working out isn't something you have to do. It's something you do naturally. It becomes part of who you are. Let's go back to Ethan. He wanted to wake up early, but alarms weren't working. He kept snoozing, slipping back into old patterns. Then he reframed it. "I'm the kind of person who values mornings." That small shift made it personal. Mornings weren't just tasks. They were a reflection of his identity. Slowly, the habit stuck. Aisha did the same with her journaling. She didn't just write. She became a person who processes her day through words. Her notebook turned from a chore into a ritual. Her identity evolved, and the habit became easier. Now, how do you actually build this identity? It's surprisingly simple. You prove it to yourself with small wins. Every time you go for a walk, you reinforce, "I'm someone who takes care of their health." Every time you study for 10 minutes, you say, "I'm a focused learner." These small votes stack up. And soon, your identity isn't something you hope for. It's something you live. Let's introduce a tool that supports this identity-building process: the habit tracker. A habit tracker is a visual way to reinforce your commitment. Each time you complete a habit, you mark it. A check mark, an X, a dot. One day turns into 2, then 5, then 20. The longer the streak, the more powerful the pull to keep it going. This simple system does 3 things. 1. It reminds you to act. 2nd, it motivates you to maintain momentum. 3. It gives you immediate satisfaction. There's even a rule for this. Don't break the chain. Made famous by Jerry Seinfeld, this principle helped him write every day. He didn't aim for brilliance, just consistency. Every day he wrote, he marked a big red X on the calendar. His goal? Never break the chain. Miss a day? It's okay. Life happens. But here's a golden rule. Never miss twice. That second miss is the beginning of a new habit, the wrong one. Let's take an example from Aisha again. She started tracking her meditation, just 5 minutes a day. The streak went from 3 to 6 to 12. Then one day, she missed. But she remembered, never miss twice. So, she started again the very next day. Her habit survived because her identity had shifted. The beauty of habit tracking is that it's visual. You see your progress, and when you see it, you believe it. You start to say, This is who I am now. And that belief? It's the strongest fuel of all. To help you start, here are a few practical tracking methods. Use a calendar or planner to mark days completed. Try apps like Habitica, Streaks, or Loop Habit Tracker. Keep a physical journal or whiteboard in your room. Use check boxes in your Notes app. Whatever's easiest for you to maintain. What matters is not the tool, but the reinforcement it creates. It becomes a mirror of your effort and a guide for your future. Let's bring this part home. Changing habits isn't just about time or discipline. It's about identity transformation. Every small action is a step in that direction. Every check mark is proof. Every streak is a statement. This is who I am becoming. In the next episode, we'll break down how to recover when things fall apart. Because no matter how strong your identity becomes, there will be slips. But with the right systems, you can always bounce back stronger. No one is perfect, not even the most disciplined among us. So, what happens when your perfect habit streak gets broken? This is where many people stumble. They miss a day at the gym and feel like all progress is lost. They eat one unhealthy meal and think the diet's ruined. One failure leads to discouragement and then to quitting. But James Clear teaches something crucial here. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new habit. Let's revisit Ethan. He was doing well with his morning routine, up at 6, journaling, stretching, focused. But one weekend, he stayed out late, overslept, and skipped it all. He felt guilty. The old Ethan might have let that slide spiral into a full relapse. But this time, he had a new mantra: never miss twice. So, the next morning, still tired, he didn't do the full routine, just made his bed, took 3 deep breaths, and drank water. Tiny wins. But they counted. The chain held. This is resilience, not in grand gestures, but in small comebacks. Clear emphasizes the difference between falling off track and staying off track. The former is human. The latter is a choice. Think of it like this. Imagine dropping your phone. Would you then stomp on it repeatedly because it's no longer perfect? Of course not. But that's exactly how we treat our goals sometimes. The way forward is simple. Forgive the lapse and return to the system. This is where habit shaping comes into play. Thought of adapting your habits to real life. Because routines must be flexible. Life isn't static. You travel, you get sick, your schedule shifts. A rigid plan breaks easily. A flexible one bends and adapts. Clear suggests reducing the habit to the smallest unit on off days. Can't write for an hour. Write 1 sentence. Too tired to work out? Stretch for 2 minutes. The key is maintaining the identity connection. You don't have to do it perfectly. Just do something. Let's take Aisha. One day she had a packed schedule, meetings, deadlines, social obligations. She didn't have time for her usual meditation or reading, but before bed she lit a candle and took 5 slow breaths. Just 5. No app, no timer. Still, that act whispered, I'm someone who takes care of my mind. That's the power of minimum viable habits. They keep the engine running. Another critical idea here is the Goldilocks rule. Clear explains that humans experience peak motivation when tasks are just on the edge of their current abilities. Not too hard, not too easy. That's the sweet spot where progress feels exciting, but not overwhelming. If your habits are too simple, boredom sets in. If they're too difficult, frustration takes over. So when you're returning from a lapse, apply the Goldilocks rule. Pick a version of your habit that feels challenging enough to matter, but easy enough to succeed. Let's say you missed journaling for a week. Instead of trying to catch up with long entries, just write 3 things you felt today. If it flows into more, great. If not, you've still cast your vote. Here's another powerful idea: habit recovery rituals. These are small anchor actions that help you reset after falling off track. Some examples: a special playlist you use only for getting back into workout mode. A favorite quote or note you keep near your workspace. A restart calendar where you write down your comeback dates. These rituals act as bridges, guiding you from failure back into flow. And don't forget, every successful person you admire has failed and restarted many times. The difference is they don't quit. They return, recommit, reinvent, because mastery is not about never messing up. It's about becoming someone who always returns. Let's recap this part. Missing once is okay. Missing twice is dangerous. Reduce the habit to its smallest form when necessary. Stay flexible. Real life demands it. Use the Goldilocks rule to keep habits challenging but doable. Create recovery rituals to bounce back faster. Most importantly, protect your identity as someone who shows up, even after setbacks. In the next episode, we'll explore how environment shapes behavior and how to design surroundings that support your success without needing constant willpower. Have you ever tried to eat healthier only to find yourself raiding the snack drawer late at night? Or promised yourself you'd read more, but your phone was always within reach? The problem might not be your willpower. It might be your environment. James Clear puts it simply: environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. Let's return to Ethan. He had a habit of checking social media every 10 minutes while working. He tried everything: timers, self-scolding, even deleting apps. But nothing stuck. Then he tried something different. He moved his phone across the room while working. Just that, out of sight. And something strange happened. The urge to check it diminished. Not gone, but weaker. He still could check it. But now there was friction. That's the magic of environment design. Clear explains that habits are often cue-driven, and many of those cues live in our physical surroundings. A bowl of chips on the counter? Cue. Phone buzz? Cue. Netflix app on the TV home screen? Cue. The solution? Don't rely on willpower. Change the cues. Design your space for success. Want to read more? Place a book on your pillow. Want to drink more water? Keep a glass by your desk. Want to practice guitar? Leave it on a stand in plain sight. These small tweaks reduce decision fatigue. You don't have to choose the good habit. The environment nudges you toward it. This is called choice architecture, arranging your surroundings to encourage better decisions. Let's look at Aisha again. She wanted to stop doom scrolling before bed. So, she created a tech-free bedtime zone. No phone in the bedroom. She bought an old-fashioned alarm clock, put a novel on her nightstand. At first it felt strange, but by the second week she was falling asleep faster and waking up clearer. Her behavior changed not because she forced herself, but because the environment made the right choice easier. Clear uses the phrase, "Make the good habit the path of least resistance." This works in reverse, too. Want to break a bad habit? Make it harder to do. Ethan set up a blocker app that made him type a 50-character sentence before opening social media. A tiny barrier, but enough to trigger self-awareness. Do I really want this right now? Most times he backed off. This is called friction design. When a behavior is hard to start, we're less likely to do it. When it's easy, we repeat it. That's why Netflix auto-plays the next episode, why snacks are placed at eye level in stores. It's not coincidence, it's psychology. But once you understand it, you can flip it. Want to stop eating junk? Store it in the back of a cabinet out of sight. Or don't buy it at all. Want to work out in the morning? Lay out your clothes the night before. Want to write daily? Open your notebook to a blank page and keep a pen nearby. Design beats discipline, because even the most motivated people will falter in a toxic environment. And even those with average motivation will thrive in a supportive one. This goes beyond the physical. Your social environment matters too. Surrounding yourself with people who reflect your desired identity, readers, runners, creators, reinforces your habits through social proof. You feel encouraged, accountable, inspired. Aisha joined a local journaling club. They met once a week to share entries and themes. She didn't want to show up empty-handed, so she wrote. Not because she had to, but because the environment pulled her in. You can curate your digital environment as well. Unfollow distractions. Subscribe to motivation. Make your feed your goals. So here's your mission after this episode. Walk through your space. Ask, does this environment support the habits I want? Make tiny changes that remove friction from good habits and increase friction for bad ones. Rearrange one room, one corner, one drawer. Anything. Shape your world, because your world shapes you. Next time, we'll dive into the deep connection between habits and identity, and why who you believe you are matters more than what you do.